Hi everybody, it's Christina. Welcome back to Adventures in Polish Land. Today I have a used book haul to share with you. I was able to go into Boston for an afternoon to see the ballet, and of course while I was there I had to visit my favorite used bookstores in the area. First up, I went to the Brattle, and then after the show, I went to Commonwealth Books. I picked up a nice eclectic stack of books at each store, and I'll be sharing those with you today. So first up at the Brattle, I didn't find anything in the clearance lot outside, but when I headed inside, I saw on the second floor they have an entire section of books in Spanish. And one of my reading goals this year is to read a book in Spanish because I've been really neglecting all of the Spanish that I spent several years of school learning. I really haven't studied Spanish with the exception of a little bit of Duolingo since I graduated college, and that was in 2012, so it's been quite a while. And I searched the Spanish section. I wanted it to be a short book so that it was something not too intimidating, but I also wanted it to be interesting to me and approachable. And I found this. This is Fiebre de Invierno by Marilyn, or Winter Fever, short book. And when I flipped to the first page, I wanted to make sure I'd be able to read it. The first sentence, it's in Spanish, but I'll read it to you in English. It says, "I'm watching an episode of the 4th season of Sex and the City when the telephone rings." And I thought, you know what? That sounds right up my alley. A woman's watching Sex and the City probably is something that I'm going to find interesting. So I grabbed this one, and it was $5.95. I have to talk about this. So these stickers from the Brattle, they have a date on them, okay? This one says April 3rd, 2015. I'm going to assume that that date is the date this book was put on the shelf. And if so, this book has been sitting on that shelf for over a decade. And I have another book that I got that's even older. So I have a lot of feelings about this. Part of me thinks this is like really interesting and magical that this book went into a used bookstore in 2015 and has been sitting on that shelf until I randomly came along one day and decided I'm going to pick it up and read it. Let me know your thoughts because there's just something really interesting and fascinating. I can't really explain it, but it's just amazing because as somebody who has worked in retail in the past, I worked in a clothing department store when I was in college. And then after I graduated law school, while I was looking for a job in my field, I worked in a beauty retail store. And obviously nothing in the beauty store is going to sit on the shelves that long because you cull things for expiration dates. But even in the retail store, there were items of clothing that would sit there on the clearance rack for maybe a few months to a year, but then it would just be purchased. Nothing would sit around for over 10 years. So I find that so amazing that this book has just been waiting there for me to come and buy it. Let me know if you get it in the comments below. But anyway, after I looked at the books in Spanish, I went over to the plays, which is right next door in the same aisle. I am a big musical theater fan. I love going to Broadway shows. I love going to regional musicals as well, but I'm not really a big play person. I have seen a handful of plays, but for whatever reason, I just can't get into them. That being said, Greg over at Supposedly Fun has been talking about plays on his channel and his book hauls, and Kate Ranking from Theater is Life, who is a theater content creator, they have also been doing a project this year where they're reading plays. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to buy a few plays, read them, and see if they spur my interest in wanting to watch the play, or at least learn more about plays in general. So the first one that I bought is The Cripple of Inishmaan. This is by McDonagh. Fun fact, I actually saw this show on Broadway with Daniel Radcliffe. My friend and I rushed the show. This was several years ago, and we got tickets in the first row. And he was literally inches away from me. I would never do this. Don't worry, I would never do this, but I could have reached out and touched him. That's how close he was to me. I don't remember much about the storyline at all. I remember the way he walked in the show, and I think I remember there being a lot of female characters in his family, but that's really it. So I figured I'm going to start with a play that I have seen before for reading plays and see if it jogs my memory. And this one was $7.50. This one's dated January 8th, 2026, so that makes more sense. But yeah, I'm interested to read this. And then the next play that I got, I never heard of it before. It is The Year Boston Won the Pennant. It's a play by John Ford Noonan. Here's the cover. This one has been sitting on the shelf since October 12th, 2014. It's just mind-boggling to me. And there's a sticker here that's half peeled off. It was from a university bookstore. I don't know which one, but very interesting. The reason I got this is because it fulfills my goal of wanting to read a play, but also because my nephew, who is turning 12 about a week from now, he loves the Red Sox. He lives in California, but he is still a Boston sports fan because that's the family he was born into. And he loves the Red Sox. He loves to talk to me about them. He loves watching the games. And I don't know much about baseball at all. I am a basketball and football fan. So I figured I could read this, see if I like it as a play, but also learn more about the history of the Red Sox. And when I read this, I'm going to take note if it's appropriate for my nephew and if it's about his reading level. If it is, I'm going to see if he wants me to send this to him, and then we can talk about it. So this one fits a twofold goal for me, both reading a play and then having something to talk to my nephew about, which I think is really nice. He's the best kid, and he has a watch now that lets him call me on the phone, and he calls me on Saturdays a lot, and it's so much fun. Okay. Next up, I went to Commonwealth Books, and I found 3 items there. First is a Europa edition. I am still exploring Europa edition, so whenever I find one in the wild, what I do is I pick it up, I read the inside flap, and I read it until it sounds interesting, and if it does sound interesting, I buy it. So this is Mayumi and the Sea of Happiness by Jennifer Tseng, and I only had to read the first sentence of this summary before I decided to purchase it. It says, 41 years old, discontented wife and dutiful mother Mayumi is a librarian on an island off the coast of New England. And I thought, middle-aged woman who's disgruntled with life and she's a librarian on an island off the coast of New England. That checks a lot of boxes for me, so I was excited to pick this one up. Then I saw Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. They had a handful of these. They are UK editions from Legend Press. I don't know if they got them in liquidation or what have you, but it seems like a brand new book. It was at a used bookstore, so I'm going to consider it used. They were selling it for $8, which is essentially its list price. It's $8.99 in British pounds, but I have been wanting to read this for years now. Fun fact about my family, my parents love watching different renditions of A Christmas Carol. They have at least 4 or 5 different versions of the movie, and every holiday season they watch them on rotation. My favorite is, of course, The Muppets. You can't get better than that, but let me know who your favorite Scrooge is in the comments below. But when I saw this there, I had to buy it. I'm sure I could have found it cheaper elsewhere and maybe even a better edition, but the time to buy it is when you see it, so I picked it up. And then finally, I got another Europa edition. This one is Life Form by Amélie Nothomb. This is a slim volume, which I've been really into shorter books for the last year or so. This one is translated from the French by Alison Anderson. I want to be a lot better about shouting out the translators in my videos because I do read a good amount of translated fiction, and I don't know if you've heard about this, but there are some publishers that are switching from real human translators to AI translators, which is a sidebar, but I am totally against that because translation is really an art form that cannot be picked up by an AI robot. It really has to be done by a speaker of the language who can catch all the nuances and all of the different forms of speech. So I'm going to be taking note to tell you who translators are now. But this is Life Form, and on the inside it says, Life Form, Amélie Nothomb's 19th novel, defies all attempts at categorization. It is a smart, singular, surreal novel about personality and philosophy, trauma and healing, solitude and human connection from one of the most widely read and beloved authors working today. That was enough to get me to pick up this book, and I'm excited to give it a go. So that is my used book haul from Boston. You got some life stories in there from me as well. I am excited to add these books to my TBR. Let me know if you've read any of them in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. And let me know if you have any recommendations for how I should approach this novel in Spanish. I am still deciding if I want to go through it word by word and look things up as I go along, or if I want to circle words I don't know and go back later and reread. I haven't really read a book in Spanish in quite a long time, so I'm deciding the best way forward with that and would appreciate your advice. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you'll subscribe if you found it interesting, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!